Good evening and welcome to another episode of Conservation Conversations with BirdLife South Africa. I am your host, Andrew de Block, and I'm streaming to you live from our Seabird Conservation Program offices in Cape Town, South Africa. Tonight is a highly anticipated webinar. The research behind this topic has caught the attention of local and international media and has at times polarized public opinion. We would like to point out that the primary purpose of BirdLife South Africa's Conservation Conversations is to educate and raise awareness for the conservation of our birds and biodiversity. In doing so, we endeavour to bring you the perspectives and knowledge of a wide range of actors in the conservation community. Please note, however, that the views and opinions expressed by speakers do not necessarily represent those of BirdLife South Africa. If you're interested in the official position of BirdLife South Africa on domestic and feral cats, I can refer you to our published position statement. This is a live document that's currently under review, but I do think you'll agree that it's practical, balanced, and based on science and not visceral responses. I will put a link to this in the chat box in just a moment, but otherwise you can find all of our position statements on our website. Now, if you would like to communicate with us this evening, please use the Zoom chat room and remember to select all panelists and attendees if you want everyone listening to see your message. Please ask your questions of the speakers by using the Q&A box. That's a dedicated functional box throughout the webinar. If you are watching us on Facebook Live tonight, you can use the comment feed for your comments and questions. Our speakers will answer these questions at the end of the webinar. I will ask you tonight to consider your comments carefully and to keep an open mind during the presentation before passing any judgments. Please respect the speakers by keeping your comments and questions free from expletives and abusive language. Those who do not abide by this will be removed from the webinar registration list for future editions. Now, that all being said, we do love hearing from you all, so please do let us know you're tuning in tonight via all the major social media channels using our hashtag Conservation Conversations. If you have missed out on any of our previous episodes, you can catch up with the recordings on the BirdLife South Africa YouTube channel, or you can listen to them via our podcast, which is available on all major streaming services. We would like to encourage all of you listening to please visit our YouTube channel and click the subscribe button to help us grow support for our webinar content. Thank you to those of you who continue to generously donate towards the production of these webinars using the Quicket donations platform. You can simply scan the QR code using your phone camera, which is on screen now, or visit the Conservation Conversations webpage to find the link to the donations portal. Your donations help us to keep these talks free for all to learn and enjoy. Conservation Conversations is currently looking for a headline sponsor in order to make these webinars financially sustainable. If you know of a company that would like to be associated with our growing and exciting brand, please drop us a mail at conversations@birdlife.org.za. Now, given the current state of the coronavirus in South Africa and abroad, BirdLife South Africa has taken the decision to move the 5th Learn About Birds, or LAB conference, onto a virtual platform. LAB will run on the 27th and 28th of May 2021 through the Zoom platform. There will be a dedicated science lab taking place from 8:30 in the morning until 3:30 in the afternoon on each day, and this will be followed by 2 layman's lectures in the evenings at 5 o'clock and 7 o'clock. You can either register for both events, or if you enjoy these webinars and are more interested in the layman's lectures, you can register to just attend the layman's lab in the evenings. To find out more and to register and pay for this event, please visit the BirdLife South Africa website, or you can also email lab2021@birdlife.org.za. Our 2021 AGM is also going virtual this year and will be held on the 29th of May, just after the lab events. To register for this, please visit the Flock page under the events tab on our website, or you can email flock2021@birdlife.org.za. Now, many of you will remember the exciting webinar a few weeks ago with Lo Kutse, exploring some of the birding and photographic opportunities along the Chobe River in Botswana. If you'd like to join BirdLife South Africa and C&P Safaris on one of our joint trips in June this year, please email the address on screen now. Some of the proceeds from these trips will come to BirdLife South Africa and support our work, so you can have a holiday with a cause. We would also like to remind you to join the South Africa Listers Club, a #proudly South African community of birders that have seen 300 or more species in our diverse country. With all of the exciting rarities showing up across the country, We're sure to see some movement on these totals in the upcoming weeks. Joining is as simple as typing your name, hometown, and total into the form on the South Africa Listers Club webpage on screen now, which can be accessed via the Go Birding tab on our website. If you are already a member of the South Africa Listers Club, remember to update your total regularly via the exact same link. Now tonight we welcome Drs. Simmons and Seymour to your screens. Excuse me. Rob Simmons runs Birds and Bats and Limited Consultancy with Marley Martins and is a research affiliate at the Fitzpatrick Institute of African Ornithology, where he's graduated 20 students over the last 2 decades. He worked in Namibia as the state ornithologist before heading south in 2003 to South Africa to pursue more academic interests. These included long-term research on black harriers with his students, research on vulture ecology and conservation in South Africa and Lesotho, as well as the evolution of giraffes and the first study of the impact of domestic cats in Africa. He has authored or co-authored 110 papers and 70 popular articles, contributed to 9 books, and written 2 books of his own, The Harriers of the World, published by Oxford University Press in 2000, and the Namibian Red Data Book on Birds, published in May 2015. Rob lives in Cape Town, is a member of the Advisory Board for BirdLife South Africa on bird-related wind farm impacts, and he also recently completed the guidelines for black harriers in wind farms. Colleen Seymour works as a research scientist in applied ecology and ecosystem services at the South African National Biodiversity Institute, otherwise known as SANBI. She obtained her PhD from UCT in 2006, working on Kalahari ecosystems. She has since worked on diverse subjects, from the importance of wild pollinators to crop yields, to Karoo rangelands and Zimbabwean Liombo systems. To date, none of her more than 80 publications has caused quite as much of a public stir. In fact, this cat research may be the first time her research has featured prominently on social media. So Colleen is in fact live with us right now. Rob is in the field, as those of you who tuned in a bit earlier might have seen, but he is going to join us a bit later, well in advance of question time. Rob has anticipated this and has pre-recorded his talk. However, I'm going to invite Colleen just to say a few words before we kick off. Colleen, how are you this evening? Colleen, we can't hear you.
Thanks, Andrew, for that. Can you hear me now? How's that?
Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you very much for that very warm welcome, and thank you all for having us tonight. So yeah, Rob is really the main person on this, but he's out in the field, so he can only join us at 7:45. But a little bit of an introduction is that the work was based on work that students did, and they were looking at what cats bring home, and then eventually they were saying, but what if they're not really bringing home what they're really killing? Is there a difference? And so this study and another study done in the US are the only 2 studies so far that have used little cameras on the cats. So this is like the cats are out there with a little GoPro on, and you can see what they're actually killing compared to what they bring home. And so some really interesting findings that have come out, which I hope will emerge in the talk. But one of them is that until recently, we always thought that cats mainly killed birds and mammals, and they do indeed. And our calculations are that for birds, they're killing about 500,000 birds a year in Cape Town, domestic cats. But they're definitely eating a lot more reptiles. So yeah, so it's been quite an interesting study, and but Rob is going to do most of the talking tonight, which is probably a good thing, and then we'll both be on at the end for questions. So thank you very much for your time and for having us.
Thank you for joining us, Colleen, and I look forward to watching this webinar along with the rest of you. All right, here we go.
Thank you, Melissa, and good evening. Good evening to all of your listeners and viewers. Thank you also for this opportunity to give something about one of my favourite topics for more than 10 years now. I've often lain awake at night while the cats are out there hunting, wondering what impact domestic cats are having on the biodiversity, and this was centred in Cape Town, as you can see. So tonight's webinar is going to be presented by myself and Dr. Colleen Seymour, friend and colleague, and at Sanby, who's put all of these studies together into a published paper, and she's become very much involved in cats, both privately, and she can tell you about that part, and in the scientific domain. We need to give credit especially to Sharon George, Kubra Peters and Francis Morling, Masters and Honours students. Sharon was the pioneer way back in 2010 who put little GPS trackers on cats and asked many participants around Cape Town suburbs to record all the prey that the cats brought in. Kubra did a winter study very similar to Sharon's, now Dr. Kubra Peters. And she also followed cats around with GPSs into a local wetland. And then Francis Morling, who took it a quantum leap further and put kitty cams onto a sample of cats and followed them around day and night to see what they were chasing, what they were eating, what they were abandoning, and what they were bringing back. That particular study we will be concentrating on this evening, and it had many surprises. They were all co-supervised by Professor Justin O'Ryan, who won't be presenting tonight, but he was very much a part of the success of this. This has caused many waves, I have to tell you, and we will dip into that a little later. I have to say, this is the third time that I've recorded this. I'm actually in the Kuru as you guys are viewing this, so I had to pre-record this, and this is my third go. My battery ran out of my laptop, so let's have another go at this, the origin. All right, does have a very long history with humans. These cats were revered in Egypt and in the Fertile Crescent, and they arose about 10,000 years ago. We now know from genetic studies they are actually a form of the North African wildcat. Felis sylvestris libica, the guy you see with the red ears there. So they've been around for 10,000 years. The geneticists feel that they actually domesticated themselves. They actually came into people's homes and left their kittens there and left as a domesticated animal, and then people realizing that they were good catters, good mousers should I say, then introduced them to their ships to keep the mice and the rats down, and that's how they got into ports all around the world, and that's how we have them in South Africa here and throughout the world except for Antarctica. So the animal we're talking about tonight is Felis catus, the domestic cat. So given their good start, why all the conflict about cats? Well, as I say, they occur across the globe. They're from your living room through the Australian deserts, some of the most inhospitable in the world, to frigid subantarctic islands. We know that on our own subantarctic islands. And they are responsible, unfortunately, for the deaths of millions of seabirds and many other species. This isn't just about birds, this is about biodiversity across the globe. I'll give you some idea of cats and their impact closer at home. These are domestic cats gone feral, generally lighthouse keepers' cats, which then go and fend for themselves. There were 2,000 odd cats on Marion Island in 1975. They were killing annually 450,000 burrowing petrels annually. So that's over 1 million in just over 2 years. Because of the importance of these burrowing petrels and other seabird species, often threatened species, those cats were removed at great expense, I might add, in 1991. All alien species have some effect on islands, and they've led to the extinction of 77 native species in modern times, and most of those are on islands. Now, cats are known to have caused extinction of at least 26% that, and I think it's now larger than the 77 native species that Butchart suggested in 2006. I think that's closer to about 130 species which are now extinct and known to be extinct as a result of cats. The most celebrated example of that is this little guy called the Stephen Island wren off the coast of New Zealand. It was the world's only flightless songbird. And Tibbles, the lighthouse keeper's cat, was known to be very fond of these birds, so fond that it drove it to extinction. It cleaned up the entire population of this little flightless wren. So there are many specimens, and unfortunately there are none alive today. In Australia, we know that there are at least 460 million marsupials which are killed, especially the possums, are killed by cats. And the estimate of the number of cats gone feral in the desert areas alone is 12 million feral cats, and spread across some of those incredibly inhospitable Simpsons desert and others. In the USA, there are just incredible suggestions that 1.4 to 3.7 billion, that's 1,000 million birds, so it's 1,400 million birds are killed by cats as a lower estimate, up to 3.7 billion birds, and up to 21 billion mammals are killed annually by the combination of the feral cats and domestic cats. And this is by very sophisticated statistical methods used by my colleague Scott Loss. We've been in contact about many different things. He's the same Scott Loss who does the wind farm work, and I must say this because he's done wind farm work and the impact of wind farms, of high-rise buildings, of cars, anything that kills birds, and actually cats are at the top of that list. So domestic cats have been studied on every continent except for Antarctica, and they all show similarly high predation figures. However, there's nothing from Africa apart from the feral cats. And I might say right from the start, these are probably all underestimating predation. Why? Because as you will see later, the kitty cam studies show that all prey are not returned. So here's the conflict. So cats, sorry, emails coming in. Cats are cute, and they are cuddly, and they are clandestine. They are responsible for millions to billions of native animals killed on continents throughout the world annually. And in certain areas, they have caused the extinction of local endemic fauna. We now know that on islands, we see the extinctions because there's no inflow. There's no inflow from the outside, whereas on in mainland continental situations, you've got an inflow into the sink effect, an inflow into these areas where the cats have taken prey out, they flow into there and the cats eat them, and so on and so on. So we don't see extinctions, but we do see a reduction in the numbers. So tonight I'm going to give you an idea of what the impact of cats, at least in South Africa and Cape Town, is. We do not have a picture in any other parts of Africa. What species are favoured by the cats? How many birds are taken by the cats? What do the prey return assessments show? And do the cats return all of the prey that they do capture? And how big is the impact in Cape Town? And are the cats going into vulnerable areas such as the protected areas, Table Mountain National Park, and so on? And finally, what mitigations can reduce the impact? That's finally for me speaking. Then Colleen is going to give you a piece on some of the flack that we have got from this study from cat advocates, and she's going to give you a flavour of what our poor students have put up with, including death threats, I might add, on Facebook. So this isn't just your back garden study. Everyone has an opinion on cats, and we pride ourselves in having some of the few facts on cats, and you can do with those facts as you wish. So to introduce you to some of the students is Sharon George. There's the lass herself. She was the pioneer. She distributed 600 questionnaires. We plastered the press with what we were doing and how we wanted volunteers and so on. From those 600 questionnaires, we got 32 completed. It still gave us some good data on 78 cats and the number of prey returns. They returned over a 10-week period. As well as that, we included the age of the cat, the sex of the cat, and whether it was neutered. And we found by recording all that we always had neutered cats in our sample. A male non-neutered cat is a very different animal to a neutered male. He will go very much further. But in our particular study, there were no non-neutered cats, if you like. And then Sharon also did some of the first GPS tracking of a small sample of cats as well over a 7-day period to see where they went. Then it was Kubra's turn to come along and do her honours study, and now what she did was to go and take the winter part, and because the students were saying to us, but hang on, we can't extrapolate from just a summer study because, you know, cold wet winters in Cape Town, we don't know what the cats are doing. So Kubra put on her Wellington boots and she went out there and she put some GPSs also on the cats, and she distributed door to door 64 questionnaires, of which 18 were completed, and she got data on 27 cats over a 6-week period. Also during that time, she was a very busy lass. She GPSed 9 cats around the Glencairn wetland, which is just north of Simonstown, for those of you who don't know Cape Town, just to see if those cats were actually going into the wetland and what their home range size was compared with the summer studies. And then the third study, introducing Frances Morling here, she had a very different emphasis. You see the little silver and black instruments around the cat's collar there. They're held by Frances. That is the kitty cam. That is a day and night recording video camera. It's only 32 grams. It attaches to the cat's collar, as you can see. So Frances followed cats for 3 weeks like this in November 2013. And again for 2 weeks in November 2014. Simultaneously to that, she was collecting all the prey that they brought home while they were wearing the kitty cams and while they weren't wearing the kitty cams, to see if the kitty cams were affecting the cat's prey return behaviour, and there was no significant difference with and without the kitty cams. And then we could say how many prey were being brought in compared with what they were catching. And that was very interesting indeed. If Frances got a little bit goggle-eyed in that, it's because she was looking at hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours of video footage of generally whiskers and nothing else, and then occasionally there was some prey items coming in. Then she's compared, of course, the prey items with what was caught on camera, and that, as I say, to be extremely interesting. So before we get ahead of ourselves, however, we're going to look at the foraging range questions. And this is the sort of foraging tracks that we got from these little GPS trackers, also very lightweight. The questions we asked were, what was the 7-day home range of the domestic cat? How far from their homes do they hunt? The homes being the little black spot in the middle of that particular recording, and do they hunt in the protected areas? There's a little GPS tracker itself with its download cable. Of course, we've got to keep the GPS on top of the cat. It's got to either got to be on the neck or the back, so we thought a harness would be the best approach. Well, we weren't very successful there because cats in Cape Town, I don't know if they occur in Joburg or Pretoria, Durban, whatever, but cats in Cape Town generally don't even wear collars, let alone harnesses. So this didn't go down very well with the cats at all. So prototype 2, as Sharon said, we developed a little leather case that the GPS travelled in with a little hole to expose it to the satellites above, and of course we had to keep that on the top of the neck and the back. So we added a little fisherman's counterweight down here, if you can see my cursor at the bottom, just a couple of grams more heavier than the GPS itself, and that proved to be actually quite successful. Here's Avatar. On his back you can see the little blue and white GPS in its leather pouch, nicely sitting on top of the neck there, not getting in the way, and in his mouth, a 4-striped mouse, so he was happily hunting, as were the other cats that we were sampling. We allowed the cat owners, we asked the cat owners to keep a very close eye on the cats for the first 48 hours while they had these little instruments attached to them. If there was any problem with them, then they weren't obliged to push their cat any further. They would voluntarily keep the cat in or remove the cat from the study. It was up to the cat owner to give us the green light. So Sharon randomly selected 14 cats. 7 of these were deep urban. That's more than 150 meters away from any urban edge, generally the Table Mountain National Park, but it could be other protected areas like the Glencairn wetland. And then 7 cats that were on the urban edge within 150 meters of that edge, which of course for the Table Mountain National Park is unfenced. Each cat was followed for just 7 days and its position was recorded every minute. And here's the spread in Sharon's study of all the suburbs where the cats were followed. Here is Avatar, 12-year-old Avatar. And the green, of course, is Table Mountain National Park. And we wanted a spread. For all of these studies, we were very concerned that we had a spread, because if we're going to extrapolate to the whole of Cape Town, we need to have suburbs which are both east and west facing, north and south facing, down in the lowlands, near the beaches, and up on the mountain slopes as well, so that we could then extrapolate to the whole of Cape Town. So let's have a look at some of these hunting patterns. Here's Benji, he's an urban edge cat from Hout Bay. And here's his foraging pattern over 168 hours, which is 7 days. He ventured 800 meters, a maximum of 800 meters from his home as the crow flies, not as the cat walks, but as the crow flies. So he went a very long way in the Hout Bay flay. Now, Professor Justin O'Rian lives in Hout Bay, and he often used to walk through this flay. He was shocked when he saw this. He said he has never seen a cat there. He couldn't believe this cat was spending so much time. This is just a 7-day track, remember. He couldn't imagine that a cat would ever be in the Hout Bay wetland, but here he is, Benji, foraging through there on a regular basis. The minimum convex polygon, which is joining all of the outer points, all of the outer blue points shown in the track there, covered 51 hectares. This is a relatively crude way of measuring the home range of this cat. This is 51 hectares, which might seem large, and if you're a cat researcher elsewhere in the world, you will be falling off your seat now, because this is very much larger. All of the Cape Town cats had very much larger home ranges as measured by this minimum convex polygon than any other cat that's been measured any other part of the world. New Zealand, Australia, UK, USA. This is a very large range. He's not the only one. This cat, Scamp, also on the urban edge in Frederhoek. He was sorry, this is deep urban cat, not an urban edge cat. Deep urban cat. He was also followed for 7 days. He went 612 meters from his home, the little black spot in the middle there. And his minimum convex polygon home range area was 43 hectares. And then we go to the other end of the spectrum. The smallest summer home range, spelt wrong there, was under 1 hectare, almost only half a hectare. And this catch potato cat travelled a maximum of 73 meters from his house. So we have the whole range. So the next question is, do they travel into protected areas? So we took urban edge cats. Here's a youngster, Lulubelle, on the edge of Table Mountain National Park, in a place called Red Hill, for those of you in Cape Town. In 7 days, she adventured 580 meters into the park, and she crossed the Red Hill Road, which is quite a busy road, twice to get there in that 7-day period. So the conclusion from this summer study, and as we'll see from the winter study, the roads are not barriers for cats. They regularly are crossing roads, probably at night. Here's Truffles, also on the urban edge of Table Mountain National Park near Elsie's Peak, for those of you in Cape Town who know. In 7 days, she adventured up to 420 meters into the park. And the shadowed area with some of the yellow dots on it, that is actually a rifle range, and those points to the northwest of the rifle range in the shadow are very steep. I've been there many times, and these cats are venturing onto these very steep slopes. The owner was actually a biologist, and she was very surprised that the cat went anywhere near the park, and especially the rifle range. So the next conclusion was steep slopes are not areas for cats. But what we did find by doing the summer and winter studies of Sharons and Kubras is that they have very different behaviours between summer and winter, especially in terms of that home range. Now, the home range in summer, the left-hand one there, the average home range, according to the minimum convex polygon, is almost 32 hectares. In the winter, that reduces right down to just 3 hectares, just over 3 hectares, and there's a significant difference between the two. Not only that, cats in summer are much more likely to hunt. So almost 60% of our sample of 78 cats were hunting in summer, and they went, as we've seen, up to 850 meters from their home. In winter, only 30%. If you've ever were hunting, if you've ever been in Cape Town during the winter, you'll know why. I spend a lot more time in my home in the wet, cold winters of Cape Town than I do in the summer. I go more than 300 meters from my home, but this is what the cats were doing. Only the maximum was 300 meters from home, and only 30% of our sample of 27 cats were actually going outside the home. Do they travel into protected areas? Well, yes, all of the urban edge cats followed in summer did travel there. They spent 17% of their time within those protected areas. The deep urban cats, as expected, had only 2.6 of their range as protected areas, and they spent 0.1% of their time there. So very much fewer, very fewer of those urban edge cats, deep urban cats were in the protected areas. Here are the results of Kubra's study of 9 tracked cats. In the lower dark areas there are the open water areas in the Glencairn wetland, which is a protected wetland. And her question was, do the cats in winter venture into the wetland? And the answer is a definite yes. The dull yellow and the dull blue together there, both of those cats in just 7 days travelled, not often, but they did travel not only into the wetland, but they crossed the Black Hill, the major highway. They were crossing that to get into the wetland. The green one above that, near Elsie's Peak, also travelled often into Table Mountain National Park in the winter. And as you can see, the pink and the blue ones in the lower part of the image there were also travelling, but very much less, but they were travelling. So into the protected areas. So more than 50% of the tracked cats do go into protected areas. So now to head on to what these cats are actually catching. The first thing that struck us was the enormous diversity of prey that these animals were catching. The obvious ones are the mice. They're always the top of the prey list wherever you go in the world. Mole rats might be a surprise, but as we know down here in Cape Town, mole rats are very often on the surface, so it's not too much of a surprise. Shrews are more of a surprise because they are unpalatable, or at least they are to my harriers. Harriers catch them and they don't eat them. But this isn't to say that shrews were actually consumed by the cats. More surprising were the squirrels. They are larger, they're a lot more aggressive, got big teeth on them, but they were killing them. The geckos in there, the skinks and geckos, are high on the list of the Cape Town cats. Geckos are a very important prey item here, as we'll see a little bit later. And snakes. The house snake is not a venomous snake, but there are many other venomous snakes that are killed by cats, and we had them in our sample here. And in among the birds, we had the largest were the hardidars. I quite like that actually, but result might not, but I'm quite liking that the cats are dealing with hardidars. The starlings are very, very common, as we'll see just now. They also include invertebrates such as scorpions and the solifuges as well. My neighbour once came with a whole cupful of large dead spiders and scorpions and some solifuges, which the cats find no problem in killing. I don't think they're eating them, but they are certainly killing them. So 44%, almost half of all those prey returned were small mammals. A quarter of them were reptiles, especially the little geckos. 16% were the invertebrates, only 13% birds, you'll be happy to hear, and 1% the amphibians, the frogs and the toads. Now, what the winter survey revealed was very different to the summer survey again. Concentrate on the green bars there. Notice that reptiles were the most common taxon taken within the winter months, which is quite surprising. You'd think reptiles would hide away in the winter. What Colleen and I believe is going on here is that the reptiles are coming out in the winter sun to try and warm up. They're not very active, they're not very fast. The cats are creeping up on them and catching them relatively easily. The amphibians being relatively high on the list there in the green bar again from Kubra's study in winter is not necessarily surprising because the Cape Town winter is so cold and wet. It's the wet part that brings out the toads and the frogs across the roads and gets them dispersing to new areas. Mammals were actually second on the list in winter, but as you can see, the green bars have a different proportion, or in different proportions to the purple bars, which is the summer. So in winter, reptiles most often; in summer, mammals most often brought back into the home. Yes, within the amphibians, Kubra found a western leopard toad, only one, but there were 32 prey items brought in, but 1 in 32, western leopard toad, is an endangered species. And it's not necessarily surprising that where you do have suburbia, the western leopard toad numbers have declined, and probably it is due to cats, domestic cats. Cat owners listening to this will tell you, but toads are toxic to a cat. They are very distasteful. Indeed, they have poison glands underneath their skin. What the cats are doing is to capture them, playing with them until they're dead. They're not eating them, but they are killing them and abandoning them probably in the field. Among the mammals, we have 126 identified during summer. Striped mice, not surprisingly, being the top of that list. The unpalatable shrews also being in there, flay rats, golden moles. There's the grey squirrel, which is an interesting one, and other smaller mouse species. Among the birds, there's the hardita, top right. The top bird in amongst that is the European starling. It's a flocking species, so it's surprising that it's up there, but I think it's just the sheer numbers of European starlings down here in Cape Town. Doves, not necessarily important. My dogs could catch a dove. They don't, but they probably could. Guinea fowl are relatively high on that list, and the Cape white-eye was quite surprising in all of that. But generally, smaller birds are being caught, let's say between below 20 to 30 grams. There's been quite a lot of talk about age in relation to hunting. Now, in Sharon's summer study, she had 78 cats, of which 60% were hunting. Cats in that sample went up to the age of 18. They generally stopped hunting at the age of 12. And as you can see from the slope of that graph, which is significant, by the way, the younger cats are the hunters in all of this. And they do a lot of hunting, and they do a lot of returning prey to the home. When they're older, there's a few couch potatoes in there as well. Of course, you can see from 1 through to 8, there's some couch potatoes, actually through to 9 and 12-year-old cats. There are couch potatoes all the way through there, but there's some very active hunters as well. They've generally stopped hunting by the time they're 13 years old. Male cats in this sample also brought in about 20% more prey than females, but that was not found to be significant, so we can't say that is a true result. So from these studies, we can estimate what the average domestic cat is bringing home in Cape Town. The students did the prey returns per 24 hours. We have gone and changed that into the number of prey in summer, in purple there, and we've worked out as 1.5 prey per month for the average cat. And in winter, it's about just under 1 prey per month. Now, if we think that the summer is similar to the spring and the autumn, so for 9 months, we've got spring, summer, and autumn at predation rates of about 1.5 per month. If if we multiply that by the 9 months of spring, summer and autumn, then we get about 13.5 prey per cat. And for the 3 winter months, we get the equivalent of about almost 3 prey, 2.7 prey for the cat. If you add those, we get about 16, just over 16 prey for the average cat in a 12-month period. 16 prey. Just remember that. Here's the interesting bit. So these are obviously based on the prey which are returned home. But does the cat bring everything home? So here enters the kitty cam study. Little lightweight video cams, as we've seen. The batteries only in 2013. This was early technology. Would only last 2 to 2.5 hours. Very much better these days. They came with infrared light, so we could see at night without disturbing anything. And so that allowed us to identify not only the hunting behaviors, but of course the prey, because the prey was being held in the mouth just below the whiskers, and the camera is right here on the neck, as you can see on that cat. And so the prey is literally hanging right in front of the video cam, the kitty cam, so we can identify it. And of course, all the nocturnal behaviors never seen before could be now revealed. Here is a real image from some of the 700 plus hours that Francis took and analysed. And this is a shrew, as you can see. It's still alive, very much alive, as are many of these prey. And she got usable footage. We had quite a lot of problems with these little early video cams, kitty cams. So we put them on 28 cats. 3 of those didn't give any material at all. And we got footage from 20 cats and 62 prey captures during over 700 hours. Now here's where the interesting bit is. We found, Francis found that 68% of all those 62 prey were eaten right where they were caught. 14% were abandoned after they'd been played with and killed, as is the cat's way. Only 18% were brought back to the house. So remember, all of the other studies were based on prey brought home. And now we're finding less than 1 in 5 of those prey are actually brought home. Therefore, 82% of the prey caught were never seen by the cat owner, which is one of the reasons why cat owners will generally tell you my cats aren't big hunters. Interestingly, this is very similar to Lloyd et al. In the USA. The only other study that has used video kitty cams like we have, she found 79% of the captured prey were never brought home. In other words, 21% of it was brought home. So about 1 in 5 prey are brought home. That means 4 in 5 are never seen by the owners. Now, 3 of the cats seen catching prey would never brought any prey home at all. These are the cat owners which will tell you my cat never brings anything home. And you can say if it's 3 in 20 that we had, that's 15%. 15% of all cats will never bring prey home, and the cat owners are justified in saying my cat never hunts, but what they don't know is that the cat is hunting out of sight, and it is definitely catching prey. Therefore, the big conclusion from this is that the prey return studies have vastly underestimated prey captures, and they've underestimated it between 4.5, according to the USA study, and 5.6-fold according to our study. Now, if you look at the little asterisk I've put in there to remind myself what that actually means, if you go back to the USA study, those 1.4 to 3.7 billion birds killed by cats in the USA, he used a correction factor of 3 for those prey not brought back. We now know that's between 4.5 and 5.6. Let's call it 5-fold. So I redid his figures, Scott lost his figures, and it's actually closer to between 2.3 and 6.2 billion birds caught by cats in the USA. Some just truly phenomenal figures there. That's not all that the kitty cam study revealed, because it also revealed that there are different proportions of prey that are taken home as opposed to those which are captured. So if you look first of all at the blue bars there, those are the prey which are returned. This is all from our own studies. So There are 137 prey returns there in blue, and more than 50% of those are mammals. And this is throughout the world. You will get on prey lists of cats, domestic cats, mammals are always at the top of that. And it's probably wrong, because if you look at the yellow bars, what our sample at least of cats in Cape Town we're using, we know that actually reptiles should be there at the top of the pile. And actually mammals are. That's because cats are more likely to bring home a mammal that it's killed than a reptile that it's killed. And one of the reasons for that is the reptiles are so tasty and so easy to consume. We assume, the mammal is a much more difficult thing to render harmless and or edible. So now we know all these things from the kitty cam studies. What is the true predation rate among Cape Town's cats? We know that it was about 16 prey captured per cat per year. The kitty cam footage has shown us that only 1 in 5 prey are returned. So using our correction factor, we now know the average Cape Town cat, that includes, I must stress, that includes all of the couch potatoes, all of the 13 to 18-year-old cats, all of those who don't really fancy going out in the Cape Town summer or the winter. Includes all of those. The average Cape Town cat is catching about 90 prey per year, and the confidence limits are around that mean are about 33 prey. So that means that the true predation rate is not only larger, but now, since we know the number of cats per household, we can work out what the total number of prey caught in Cape Town is. So this is what we did. We went to the Cape Town census data. We found that there are approximately 830,000 households within areas with cats. And the reason we say that is when we thought, well, we should include the townships in here, of course, when we spoke to TIERS, the SPCA and so on, they say there are very few cats in these areas. And they know there are very few cats in these areas because they are regularly going into the Cape Town areas and the townships to do spaying of dogs. Generally, there are very few cats. They are the people who told us there are very few cats within these particular suburbs. So we chose 830,000 households which occur within cat owning areas. We know from our door-to-door surveys that only 18% of those homes keep cats, and each of those homes that do keep cats have an average of about 2. And we know that from our door-to-door surveys. We went to about 400 different homes to estimate those figures. So if you put all that together, we know that Cape Town has a minimum of about 300,000 domestic cats, and they occur at very high densities. There's somewhere between 150 to 300 cats per square kilometre, depending on which suburb you are in. And that, I might add, is very much higher than the natural felid predators that are around in Cape Town. So we get caracals on the urban edge here, and the domestic cat density is about 400 to 500 times larger than the caracal density, and it's also about the same order of magnitude, 400 to 500 times larger than the African wildcat, the natural predators that should be here. So these domestic cats are occurring in very high densities. So here we get to the crunch figures. If 300,000 cats are catching about 90 prey per year per cat, then the total number of prey captured by Cape Town's cats is in the order of 27 to 28 million cats. The upper estimate, the confidence limits worked out by Colleen, are over 30 million animals in Cape Town. That's an awful lot of dead animals. We also think this is an underestimate because many of these cats are not bringing in prey at all. And also our little kitty cams were not actually operating between about 2:30 in the morning, at night in the morning, and about 6 o'clock. We couldn't ask our very hard done by cat owners to be up at 2:30 to change over the batteries. So we didn't capture that deep night, if you like, between 2:30 and about 6 o'clock. So we're also underestimating. So there's those cemetery stones there. There will be many more than 27.5 million animals involved, we believe. So based on these proportions recorded on the kitty cams, which are significantly different to those brought home, these 27 million prey comprised approximately 14 million reptiles. So it's over half were reptiles. And there's the little marble leaf-toed gecko, which is the favorite snack on the run, as cats find them, and they're very easy to catch. And they eat them, and they obviously like them. I was actually removing some bark from a tree just the other day, and there was a little marble leaf-toed gecko. I don't have any cats in my garden, or the next door for that matter, and I thought this guy at least is safe, but there he was, so just sitting under the bark. He's only about probably 10 grams, if that, and he is a favoured prey of Cape Town's cats. Among those prey, 6.8 million mammals, the striped mice, the shrews, the moles, the squirrels, remember. 5 million of those are invertebrates, butterflies, to scorpions, to beetles, to cockroaches, and so on, and including the spiders and the solifuges. And then we come to the birds, only 450,000 birds. So from the very smallest, from the waxbills, all the way up to the hardy-dars. And if we were to do more studies, remember this is only really based on 3 years, 3 studies over 4 years, we'd probably get a very much larger spread of different species of birds. So at the moment we've got waxbills to hardy-dars. And then in amongst the 450,000 amphibians, we have the western leopard toad there, and endangered species within the winter surveys. So the next question is, what is the total estimated number of prey captured by domestic cats within the Table Mountain National Park? We know Greater Cape Town, about 27 to 28 million. How many of those are probably coming from the Table Mountain National Park? By carefully going around all of the urban edges which have a border with Table Mountain National Park on Google Earth, I was able to estimate the amount of edge. So it's not all of those edges you've seen there between the green and the white, but a large proportion. I could work out the area, I could work out how many houses were within those areas, and therefore how many cats were in those areas. And by using those calculations, I could work out about 2,200 cats along the border with Table Mountain National Park. And of course, there is no fence there. There's nothing stopping those cats getting in, as we saw from the GPS studies. We only took those cats that were within 3.75 hectares, the smaller of the home ranges. So what do 2,260 cats catch? If they're taking at 90 prey per cat per year on average, including all of the catch potatoes, which catch nothing during the year, then about just over 200,000 prey we estimate are taken per year from within this internationally known national park and biosphere reserve. That's a rather lot of prey for a protected area. We've told sandparks about this. They are aware, and they will be looking into this. So the next question is, how do we reduce the impact of cats on biodiversity? There are some people that have shown, some studies that have shown that 50% fewer birds and 60% fewer mammals are caught by belled cats, and that's in Cape Town. Colleen is quick to point out that a reptile does not hear a bell, and so it would not hear a cat coming, and even if it could, it wouldn't necessarily mean danger. So it's going to do nothing for the high toll on the reptiles. Probably the most important mitigation we have is to keep cats in at night when most predation occurs. What I didn't tell you in that previous was that the kitty cam study showed that fully 92% of the successful predation attempts occurred at night, and that is another reason why cat owners will generally tell you that their cats don't catch anything, because while they're asleep, the title of this presentation, while they are asleep, their cat is out there hunting, and 92% of the predation attempts, the predation successes we saw occurred at night, which is a very high percentage. So please, cat owners, please keep your cat in at night when most predation in Cape Town is occurring. Please neuter all your cats. We don't want unwanted kittens, and I must say the SPCA and TEARS and other animal welfare Organisations around Cape Town are excellent in this. We didn't find a fertile cat anywhere in our sample, and we've sampled a lot of cats, so good for them. My own things I would add here is disallow more than 2 cats per household. I see the City of Cape Town allows 4 cats per household, and on farms virtually unlimited numbers. At the moment the average is about 2 per household, so the Cape Townians do seem to be adhering to that. We haven't even touched on feral cats, and generally you find feral cats wherever there's food, and I've seen this behind restaurants, and other people know this, behind restaurants where the food is thrown out. In riverbeds where stuff is discarded, you will see feral cats, and this is where the biggest conflict arises, where people, especially ladies who feel sorry for cats, are feeding cats, and then suddenly you've got a feral cat colony. I used to live in Windhoek, and I once counted between 20 and 30 cats. I used to go early in the morning with my dogs, and in the local riverbed, in the Klein Windhoek River, there was a lady who used to feed about 20 to 30 feral cats, completely unwanted, not necessary to be there, an alien species being fed, and no wonder I never saw any waxbills or weavers or bulbuls in the river. They were mainly in my garden and other gardens where cats weren't allowed. Now, this is me being controversial. I would not allow any feeding of stray cat colonies. As I say, even though we haven't looked at feral cats, there's been one study in the USA which looked at the prey capture success of feral cats, and they found it was 10-fold higher, an order of magnitude higher than the prey capture success of the domestic cats. And yeah, that's one reason I would not allow the feeding of feral cat colonies. You're just producing a problem where there doesn't need to be one. I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to ask Colleen to tell you a little bit about some of the flack that we've got from this study. I was hoping to end with an MP4 video clip made by Bloomberg QuickTake in London, who made Matthew Long made a very nice little video which featured pretty much all of the co-authors. It's just too large to show you. I might send it to Melissa and she can end off with that. I see I've spent almost 47 minutes talking to you, and I must allow Colleen a say as well. So over to Colleen Seymour.
Thank you, Rob, and everyone, for the chance to speak to you tonight about this. I must say I don't normally work in the conflict sort of controversy space. I normally work on karoo bosses and insects and things that people don't really care about. So this was a bit of a shock to me at the quick media response. The day our paper came out, Tiara Walters of the Daily Maverick contacted us and asked us if she could cover the paper. And within 2 days, pretty much, she had produced this piece, now quite infamous piece, Apocalypse Meow. And it then got very quickly taken up by all sorts of outlets, including Carte Blanche, Bloomberg, QuickTake, a German TV channel, a Chinese TV channel, even the Daily Mail, and then of course another piece in the Daily Maverick about trying to keep people's cats. So nowadays with papers, you can also check its plum X metrics on some journals. And this gives you an idea of how your paper's doing in social media. And I can see here the paper's got 2,100 social media, I guess, shares, mentions. I don't know much about social media, but I think that sounds like quite a lot to me. So doing this kind of work, I guess, was never going to be without conflict. And we all understand that people are attached to their pets, especially now with COVID. People have been confined in confined spaces. Pets become very important companions. So we do understand that. But a group called Fox Felina, which run on donation money to do trap, neuter, release work, they employed Peter Wolf to write for them, and he wrote to us explaining, you know, what the issues with our work, and we explained back to him what he'd missed. and then he just ignored what we wrote to him anyway. And what he wrote, and which I'll explain a little of in the next few slides, that has been adopted by the South African National Cat Action Task Force. And they've brought it to us on 3 occasions, and each time we've answered them, and then each time they just escalate it up a level because they're not happy with our answers, which seem fairly straightforward to us, but for some reason they're not happy with them. And the most recent was they escalated it to the Deputy Vice Chancellor of UCT, not understanding how paper publication works, and they asked for the paper to be retracted, which is it's not how it works at all. And unfortunately the data are the data, and we're open to discussion, but we were as conservative as possible, actually, and if anything, it's probably likely that our calculations are underestimates. So let's start with one of Peter Wolf's main things. His big issue was that the cats recruited for the kitty cam studies were all confirmed hunters, and so it's not fair to apply a correction factor from them to all cats. The fact is that there's no point putting a camera on a cat that doesn't hunt, because then you're not working out what hunting cats bring home. So we had these active hunters with the kitty cams, and we found that they only bring home 18% of what they kill. And so the correction factor is 5.6, right, to get it up to what the actual total is that they kill. There were a lot of couch potatoes, as Rob likes to refer to them. And as we know, they killed nothing. As far as we know, they killed nothing. They may kill things, but let's give them the benefit of the doubt, so they didn't kill anything. Over 40% of our cats in summer didn't bring anything home. 70% of our cats from winter also didn't bring anything home. So they all get zeros. When you multiply anything by 0, you get 0. So there's no exaggeration there. Multiplying the non-hunting cats, what they brought home, 0, by anything, if that would still give us 0. So the other point that the National Cat Action Task Force like to bring up is that if cats were removed, we'd be overrun by rats. But if we look at the data, we find that only 14% of the animals killed could be considered as belonging to pest species, and that includes Rattus, and Rattus norvegicus, house mice, and European starlings. And for urban edge cats, there was only 6%. In other words, in suburban areas, 86% of animals, and in urban edge areas, 94% of animals were indigenous animals that are not considered pests. So there's a very large sacrifice of other animals being made for the service of pest control that cats might provide. So given that cats are very important to people, I think they're not going to go away. And so maybe I think the next new frontier in research is mitigation. As we've already said, bells are not heard by reptiles, and even if a bird or a mammal does hear a bell, does it make a difference? There have been some studies that have found a difference. Certainly Cicchetti et al., the paper below here that's just come out in 2021, found that bells made no difference to what cats brought home. Catios are closed-in patios, so your cat can go outside onto a sort of patio that's outdoors, but it's fenced in. Buffer zones, perhaps areas within a certain distance of protected areas, there should be different rules for cat ownership. Birds be safe collars, I think they're these broad, bright collars. They have been found to reduce bird predation, and certainly Cicchetti et al. Found it was a 42% fewer birds brought home by cats wearing birds be safe collars. Keeping cats in at night, I'm not sure about this one, to be honest. I think that keeping them in at night, cats are not stupid. They'll just change to hunting during the day if that's their hobby. And a lot of the cats, what the cats brought home were diurnal species. So I think even the cats in our samples of returns were hunting during the day. They were bringing home striped field mice and things like sunbirds. These are all diurnal species. The other option is keeping them in all the time. In the United States, this seems to be an option, and when our paper came out, a lot of Twitter feeds said, well, if you've got a cat, you just have to bring it in, you have to keep it indoors. I know surveys in the United Kingdom and New Zealand have shown that people are not prepared to do that. Their cat's quality of life is more important than the wildlife in their gardens, so, or even in their area, in their neighbourhood. So yeah, that's where we are on that. But I do think this is the new frontier for research, because I think until we can reduce the effect of cats, I think they're now having a really marked effect. I don't think there's any more debate about whether cats are having an effect. They are. So yeah, on that maybe slightly depressing word, I'd like to thank you all for your time. Thank you.
Thank you to Rob and Colleen for sharing their insights with us tonight, as well as your extensive experience in this hot topic. We also acknowledge Sharon Kubra Francis. Thank you for allowing Rob and Colleen to represent you and your work as well tonight. As a science-driven organization, BirdLife South Africa appreciates the scientific rigor and the effort that went into producing as objective an analysis of this topic as possible. You will never please everybody, but you have both presented the data as they are, and it's up to pet owners now to internalize some of your suggestions and remedy this problem so that we can bring some of those rather shocking prey numbers down. If you have any questions for our presenters tonight, you can put these in the Zoom Q&A box or in the Facebook Live comment feed. Please remember, again, just to keep things civil in both the chat box and your questions. We will get to those in just a second. I would just like to remind everyone to please participate in the post-webinar survey, which will pop up when you exit the webinar. It will take just 2 minutes to fill in the online survey afterwards, and there will be some useful information on there for our researchers tonight. So please do that. Next week, we feature Chris Patton from Sandparks' Business Development Unit. Chris is an avid and knowledgeable birder, and will be kicking off what will become a regular feature on Conservation Conversations of birding destinations within the Sandparks network of reserves. Chris will give an overview of birding in the parks, as well as share some of his hidden gems and personal favorites that he has picked out over his visits to each and every one of the national parks during his time at Sandparks. This is sure to be a fun and informative webinar for all of you birders out there who enjoy visiting our many wonderful parks across the country. Okay, we're going to get into some of those questions. So Rob and Colleen, I'm going to invite you to turn your videos on and unmute yourselves, and brace yourselves as well. No, just kidding. There's not too much out there that's too fiery. So we're going to kick off with a question from Jackie Badenhorst. Rob, I don't see your video on yet. Are you with us?
I am, Andrew. You turned it off and I can't turn it on.
Ah, right. Okay, let me see if I can rectify that for you. If not, we can hear you just fine, so that's okay. So
there we go.
There we go. We can see you. Thanks for joining us all the way from the Karoo.
No worries.
Andrew, I can answer. Is it the caracal question?
Yeah. So let me just pose that for everyone who's listening.
Sure.
So Jackie Badenhorst wants to know whether there's an overlap of caracals in Cape Town and domestic cat territories, and she asks us because she thinks there might be an overlap in their stomach linings. Go for it.
Yeah, Jack. That is very much a popular perception of cats and caracals. And in fact, it's a paper that Justin, who's one of our co-authors, is still bringing out. But they used scat analysis, and I think that it was mainly scat analysis. And they found that the caracals around, certainly the South Peninsula part of Cape Town, cats are only about 3.5%, well, and cats represent about 3.5% of what they eat. And that mostly they're eating flea rats and Egyptian geese. Anyone who lives in Cape Town will know that there are plenty of those, and guinea fowl. So those main things they eat are those three species. So cats are a fairly small portion of their diet, which is surprising given how many cats there are around. And there was some work done in Atlantic Beach where there were a couple of caracals that became cat fans or specialists. But I don't know what happened with that study.
Very interesting. Thanks, Colleen. There's a question here from Robin Hurd. I'm going to pose this one to Rob. Robin lives in the eastern suburbs of Pretoria and doesn't have any pets, but has a bird feeder that she puts out suet and bird seed on very often. She's worried that perhaps the birds are attracting local cats, and she's worried about endangering the birds that she's feeding. So Rob, she wants to know whether feeding birds in an urban area is a bad idea. Is it endangering the birds?
I think that depends, Andrew, and the questioner, thank you for the question, where your bird feeder is placed. We've heard this comment before within Cape Town, and certainly cats are indeed attracted to the bird feeders. They're eyeing them, day and night. And what I would suggest is that, first of all, you put the bird feeder high, you put it on a metal pole. It might keep it away from the squirrels as well as the cats. And as long as it's high, then I don't think you're going to have an issue with the cats. There are other ways of keeping cats out of your garden, and one of those is to use sonic devices, which cats don't like. We haven't done any research on that, so I wouldn't like to go into that. You can also ask your neighbours politely, as Colleen well knows, if they could actually keep their cats out of your own garden, because we've both experienced this. And it doesn't always go down that well, so you've got to do it very politely and very persistently, unfortunately. And as Colleen and I have been through, patios and enclosed patios and catios, and keeping your animal in at night and during the day is probably the best way to keep good neighbourly relations and your bird population intact.
Thanks very much, Rob. Some great suggestions there. There are a couple of questions here. I'm just going to group them all relating to the Marion Island example, and some people pointing out that people took cats to Marion Island, and there's a few questions about that whole story. Rob, if you maybe want to just expand on that a little bit.
I don't know the fine details, I'm afraid, Andrew. I do know that there were an awful lot of cats. I think the number of cats killed by the mop-up team was in the region of possibly 4,000 cats by the end. It took a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of money to clear those cats, so that the petrels were able to go back to their natural habitat. Indeed, humans were taking the cats and have taken the cats, and that's probably how they arrived in this part of the world and many other parts of the world, by people introducing them to their ships to keep the rats and mice down. And that could have happened 3,000-4,000 years ago. We don't actually know, but yeah, it's a difficult one. Now that the cats have disappeared from the island, the petrels, burrowing petrels are back, and as I'm sure someone else will raise the issue, well, what about the mice? Because where you have no cats, you're going to have the mice, and we all know on some of our islands we've had a mice issue, and I know that the BirdLife South Africa are busy raising funds to try and tackle that as well. Just no alien species on islands is the solution. End of story.
Absolutely. I think the story I had heard about Marion Island is that cats were actually purposefully introduced around the base, just a couple of cats to begin with, to deal with the mice there, and they just got out of hand very quickly and figured out that birds were pretty stupid and not used to having alien predators, and were much easier prey than the mice, which is where the huge expansion of their population came from. But absolutely you're right, just take alien species off of islands and you seem to solve that problem. There's a couple of questions here from our newest staff member at BirdLife South Africa, Cairo Josiah. He's our conservation intern, and he actually has just finished his MSc with Colleen Downs, who you probably both know, on urban birds and some of the threats that face them as well. And he has a few questions here. I'm going to pick and choose because he's asked quite a few. But he wants to know, for instance, how many scavenging events did you find? Were there any records of cats scavenging prey that may have died from other causes? Any evidence of that kind?
Colleen, not that I'm aware of. No, I don't think cats are scavengers. They're a bit like cheetahs. They prefer to kill their prey, either finish it there, as we saw in the kitty cams, or abandon it, or bring it home. So as far as I know, they're not scavengers. Colleen?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think cats, especially the domestic cats we're working with, they're well fed. They're not eating because they're hungry. They're just playing. So we didn't have any records of that in our data set.
Interesting. And he also wants to know, which I think is quite a good question, whether you looked at whether the kitty cams made it easier or harder for cats to catch their prey, like the light or the shape of the cameras making cats more easily detected by prey, perhaps. Did you look into that?
We did. Colleen, you're going to answer this one.
You can go. So, well, really, we asked people to first, we don't know if it did, but they certainly didn't seem to have trouble catching things. And we did ask people to check on their cats for a few days and see if they settled down. But yeah, and the cameras themselves are really lightweight. It's not even, I don't know what, not even 1% of the body weight, Rob. I'm having a senior moment here, I can't remember.
They're less than allow me to help you with your senior moment,
yes,
Cole.
Thank you.
So less than 1% of the weight. And
it.
yes, indeed, Frances did look at that in a scientific way. She asked the owners to record everything that the cat brought in while it had the kitty cam on, and then without the kitty cam on, and there was no significant difference between the returns and without. So the answer to the question is it did not seem to have any effect.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you, Rob.
I've just had a confirmation from my colleague Christian Brink, who is our large terrestrial birds and raptors project manager. He has confirmed that on Marion there were 4 cats originally taken to the weather station to control mice around the base, but they weren't neutered and went feral, and that's where the whole problem started. So from just 4 cats, that's that whole catastrophic
Amazing.
Event took place. Yeah, thanks Christian for getting us the facts there. That's important. There's another question related to caracals here. Not so much caracals predating on cats, but do you think they potentially compete for food with the caracals, i.e. reduce the caracals' chances of survival because the amount of prey domestic cats take out of the environment?
That is a very interesting question. I'm just sorry that Justin O'Ree, and I'm sure he's listening in, he could answer that question. I don't think we're in a position to do so. Yeah, I'm not even going to speculate on that one. Colleen?
I think they actually, sorry, I wouldn't, were you talking about competition in prey?
Yes.
I think there is a bit of competition, so maybe on the flare rat side, but actually it looks to me like caracals eat a lot of larger things, and the cats are probably more competing with the genets and striped polecats and things like that. I think the caracals, I mean, I don't think many cats are going to take down an Egyptian goose or a guinea fowl easily. Maybe a baby Egyptian goose or guinea fowl. But yeah, so I don't think there's a lot of competition there.
Thanks very much. There's a question here from one of our long-time webinar stalwarts, Eleanor Mary Cadle, and she wants to know whether you are going to look at the effect of feral cats, perhaps. We've looked at domestic cats here. Would it not be possible to monitor a feral cat or two and see what impact they might have on wildlife in the area?
Rob?
That would be a fascinating thing to look at. They're a little bit more difficult in that they don't come home at night and pop stuff on your carpet. But there's technology now where you can perhaps ask a vet to anesthetize a cat and then put a little collar which then will download what it's seen, a little video cam, at a distance. And actually, Colleen Downs has tried this not with kitty cams, but with GPSs. In the States, they have done so it certainly is possible. And that's how we could give you some figures on the figure that prey brought in was about 10 10 times greater for the feral cats than it was for the domestic cats. There's been one study on an island off the coast, east coast of the USA. So, you know, we can't really give any credence to, you know, larger samples. But I think I'll have to leave it there.
Okay, fair enough. And another question about expanding the research, perhaps. Rob, are you looking at including other cities, perhaps in South Africa or elsewhere, to look at how these might differ?
Well, Andrew, as you can see from my grey hair, I'm close to retirement. So I'm actually going to leave it to the younger set to come along and do it. And I hope that Justin O'Rian at UCT or even Colleen at Sandby is going to take up those cudgels. It is a study crying out to be done, Andrew, absolutely crying out to be done. We think they're having a greater effect per capita than domestic cats. I've got lots of other things on my plate. You know, feral cats are very, very important. I'm not going to take up that, but if there's anyone listening of the 400 odd participants, please, you know, make a plan, talk to Justin, talk to myself, talk to Colleen, and we can perhaps come up with a plan and some funding and go from there. If there's any keen students out there willing to work day and night, then, you know, we'd be interested to hear from you.
Yeah, knowing Justin very well, he was my honours supervisor. He's going a bit grey himself, so I think, Colleen, it's up to you. Sorry, Justin, if you are listening. I'm going to move on. There's a question here from Dr. Llewellyn Taylor. Llewellyn wants to know if any studies have been done on African wildcats in natural environments, and is that something we can compare domestic cat predation rates to?
Is the question how much African wildcats eat compared to? So
he asks about the composition of prey species as well as predation success and numbers.
From the bit that I've read, it looks like it varies quite a bit across. So if it's in an arid environment, you'll find like the Kalahari and those things are eating loads of insects, solifuges, anything they can get their paws on. And yet if you move across to Kruger and places like that, then I think they've got quite a different diet. So it's very varied. And I imagine the same would be of domestic cats too. It would be very interesting to see what domestic cats in the Karoo are eating. But yeah, I don't know of any study that's looked at both.
I do know, Andrew, that there's studies done on black-footed cats, which are very much smaller in general than your domestic cat, up in the Lowveld area. I don't know the results of that, but certainly there have been studies. We're not at liberty to give you those results. We just don't know them. We've concentrated so much on domestic cat, and you know, it's for other people to come along, follow in our footsteps, and to show what the overlap is. And as Cole said, you know, they're probably going to be wide variation across different. We would expect it across different environments.
I think there's a lot of research that can come out of this initial surge that you've managed to spur on. So we look forward to that. There's a question from Wilfred Reynolds, and he wants to know, as do quite a few other viewers, that about playing with cats and how that might mitigate against them going out and hunting in their immediate environment. So he wants to know maybe a little bit more about how to use playing with a cat and using cat toys and that kind of thing to satisfy that hunting instinct. Colleen, I saw you referenced that in a recent 2021 paper, in fact, so maybe you can field this one.
Yeah, I can also send you that paper, but basically they found that feeding the cats a high protein diet without grain seemed to reduce predation. But again, they didn't use cameras, they just used what cats brought home. So you must remember that they might have missed quite a bit. But they found a 33% reduction in what the cats brought home. If you play with them like these little rope things, and they had this little fish thing on it, and the cats had to attack that. And they found if you do that for 5 to 10 minutes a day, that reduced predation by 25%. But they did find, you know, those little puzzle things that have got a hole in and there's food inside. They found, I don't know if that just frustrated the cats, but the cats' predation was up 33%. So that's not a good idea. And yeah, they found bells made no difference, and collars only seemed to affect bird numbers. Yeah, but those are the main.
Birds are
findings.
quite important, Colleen, in all of this.
Yes, yes. But yeah, no puzzle food things. That's a bad idea. So I think the cats just get really annoyed.
Okay, all right. There's also a question about the difference here. We focus on cats tonight. Are there any studies similarly done on dogs?
Wow, I don't know, Rob.
Yeah, I actually don't know. I don't think so. I mean, while we've been trawling the literature and we've been doing it for about 10 years now, I've never come across a similar paper, you know, from across the world, and cats have been studied across the world, we know. I've never seen a reference to it. And, you know, Colleen, who's more widely read than I, you know, and it sounds like she hasn't either. So I think the answer to that is possibly no, but, you know, we would have to do a specific Google search and so on to find out.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever typed in the word dog predation, so I don't know. I would have to start by looking.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. It seems what I'm taking from a lot of these questions is that we know a lot now as a result of your studies, but there is still a lot more to be done in terms of expanding this research to different areas, potentially different species, looking at domestic versus feral cats as well. So certainly, I think you've, as you already know from some of the public reactions, I think you've opened a can of worms, but you only just opened it. There's a lot more opening that can be done, as scary as that might seem to you both. Yeah, so we look forward to this important research carrying on, and I'm going to cut us off there because we are reaching our 8:30 cutoff time anyway. All that remains to be said is thank you from me to both of you for tuning in tonight and letting us know about this important topic. I think it's been very enlightening for lots of people. We're all aware that cats are super predators, but some of those numbers are absolutely mind-blowing. So thank you to you and your 3 students who you cited in your presentations for your excellent work, and thank you for joining us tonight. And also thank you to everyone who tuned in. Thank you to those who posed some excellent questions for our guests tonight, and thank you to those who popped all sorts of messages of encouragement and some hints and tips that they've found for controlling their own cats. So I'm going to leave the Zoom room open for a few more minutes, and maybe 5 more minutes just for people to interact in the chat box. Remember to select all panelists and attendees if you want everyone to see your useful messages. And thank you to you too. And I'm going to leave any last words for you before you leave. Otherwise, it's a good evening from me.
I think I would say, Andrew, just thank you for this platform to share our research. I've followed the webinar series that you and Melissa have put together many times. Fascinating topics. So a big thank you to you guys as well.
Yeah. For me too. Thank you very much, and for all the kind comments from everyone. It's been great.
Thanks to you both. Have a good evening.
Thanks.
You too, Andrew.
Bye.
Good night.